guys, we have a lot of new people here since the last time I did a Q&A, and I would love to answer some of your questions, and I'm gonna kind of show you a bit of like an inside look into my life, pictures of the dog that you hear in my old videos, and all of that stuff. So please drop your questions down below, and I will be filming that this week for some extra content for you guys. Anyway, I feel like I haven't filmed for the channel in forever, but I literally just filmed for Patreon like yesterday, so I don't know, I feel awkward. Anyway, instead of a solved case for you guys, I have a missing persons case, and I always talk about what I think at the end, so I don't want to give you any spoilers. I am still getting over whatever sickness I had over Christmas, so if I sound a little different, that is why. My apologies. I really wanted to post it for you today. So, we are going to talk about 9-year-old Zachary Bernhardt. He was a sweet and cheerful little boy whose positive outlook on life was evident to everyone who met him. I'm sorry, I thought he was 9. He was only 8 at the time of his disappearance. And he lived in one of my favorite locations, Clearwater, Florida. He was a 3rd grade student at Eisenhower Elementary School. Zachary was described to get good grades, and his teachers said that he never acted out in class. He had this calm and cheerful demeanor, which really kind of didn't exactly portray what was really going on in his home life. He had no relationship with his father, and he and his mother were constantly moving from one apartment to another, but Zach, I guess, really kept up his positive attitude. He was this kind of kid that really just let nothing get him down. Zach's mother, Leah, wasn't a morning person, much like myself. She liked to stay up late, and she was used to working at night. So she was off on the evening of this case, Sunday, September 10th of the year 2000. She found herself unable to fall asleep after Zach had gone to bed. So, at around 3 a.m., she felt super restless, and she decided to step outside of the apartment and smoke a cigarette. Before she did this, she did glance into Zach's room to check on him, and he was in there sleeping soundly. So she stepped outside into the humid night air. Now, it's Florida, so it's hot, it's humid, and Leah makes a spur-of-the-moment decision. She wants to jump in the complex's pool. It was located in the center of the apartment complex. She swam a quick few laps around the pool before getting out and walking the short distance back to her apartment. She then changed into some dry clothes cases, they don't move as fast, I feel like, because they feel like they ran away, but maybe they think an 8-year-old wouldn't. She was honest with the police and said, yes, I had left my apartment unlocked when I went to go for a swim. She said she wasn't going to be gone long, and she thought it would be okay since she wasn't even leaving the apartment complex. She insisted that Zach would not have left the apartment on his own. He knew better. He knew that he was supposed to ask his mom for permission to go anywhere. And he had no history at all of wandering away from home. So like I said, the police responded quickly and they immediately completed a door-to-door search of the Savannah Trace apartment complex. They checked empty apartments, they combed through dumpsters, they searched several neighboring apartment complexes, but they were unable to find any clues as to Zach's whereabouts. Around 4 p.m. on Monday, Deputy James Kane from the Manatee County Sheriff's Department arrived at the complex, and he brought along with him his bloodhound, Lonzo. Lonzo was given several of Zach's items in order to try and track his scent. Now, Lonzo did pick up a scent trail toward a different apartment complex, but he lost it almost immediately, and he spent the next hour trying to recover the trail, but he was unsuccessful in this, which I feel cousins wrote her notes of encouragement, and one of them said, "Zach was always really good at hide and seek. Never stop hoping. All prayers with you. As Zach always says, don't worry, be happy." Other relatives could only hope that Zach's sunny outlook on life would carry through whatever he might be facing. Police and volunteer firefighters gathered at the Eddie Moore baseball field in Clearwater on Thursday morning. From there, they broke off into smaller groups and searched through more than 500 acres of mangroves, underbrush, and swampy woodlands. A few groups used boats to search around the shoreline of Old Tampa Bay, searching in vain for any signs of Zach. The search for Zach was unfortunately scaled back on Friday. More than 1,000 acres surrounding the apartment complex had been thoroughly searched, but Zach's whereabouts remained a mystery. Detectives spent the day reviewing the hundreds of tips that they had received, and they continued interviewing everyone associated with Zach. 1 week after Zach went missing, investigators were no closer to determining what happened to him than they'd been on the very first day. Wayne Scheller said that Leah was not the focus of their investigation, but they had impounded her car so it could be processed for potential evidence. He noted that this was routine. This did not mean that she was a suspect. He said that they had spoken to her many times about the disappearance of her son. They have not discounted what she has told them, and they found nothing to disprove what she is saying. Now, for the most part, Leah tried to stay out of the public eye. Aside from that one public statement that I mentioned earlier, she really refrained from commenting about Zach's case. She spent most of her time in her apartment with her mom and sisters, just praying that someone would call to tell them that they had found Zach. Danelle Donnelly, one of Leah's sisters, told reporters that Leah believed someone had abducted Zach while he had been sleeping. Leah's mother, Carol, admitted that the family was frustrated and getting increasingly anxious for answers. She worried that the case was in danger of going cold and wanted to make sure that no one would forget that her grandson was still missing. While the case had been headline news for days immediately following Zach's disappearance, as more and more days went by without any progress, the publicity started to fade. She said, "No one is putting his picture anywhere now. How will they find him if no one is putting his picture out?" On September 27th of the year 2000, Wayne Scheller told reporters detectives were taking a closer look at Zach's mom, Leah, though he refrained from calling her a suspect in his case. From the beginning, officers had any number of concerns about the circumstances of Zach's disappearance. Investigators do not believe that they have the whole story from Zach's mother. Now, remember I said people said she was a good mother. Most of the neighbors said she was dedicated. She loved her son. There are always the other people that have to chime in. So, a few of the neighbors claimed that the single mother liked to go out drinking, and she would leave Zach home alone while she did so. At least one neighbor told police that she had left Zach alone for hours on the night that he went missing. This person claimed to have seen Leah's transactions or testimony of people from bars. I didn't find any of that, so I don't really know how relevant we can say that, but now, Zach wasn't Leah's only child. She also had a 6-year-old daughter. She had initially had full custody of the little girl, but the little girl was later sent to live with her father in Michigan because he alleged that Leah went out drinking too much, and a judge had granted him full custody of the little girl. I just like to include all the facts. I don't really know if that's relevant or not. Leah and Zach had lived in several different apartments before moving to the Savannah Trace complex the previous year. Leah had been evicted from several different apartments for failure to pay rent. 5 days before Zach had gone missing, she had received yet another eviction notice. She was once again behind on her rent payments. 3 weeks after Zach disappeared, Leah quietly moved out of Savannah Trace. By the middle of October, leads in Zach's disappearance had started to dry up, and most of the detectives who were initially assigned to work on his case were no longer working on it. They admitted they still were not sure what happened to 8-year-old Zach, but despite an extensive investigation, they had been unable to find any clues to his whereabouts. He had simply vanished into thin air. As the investigation entered its 3rd month, Zach's case was featured on an episode of America's Most Wanted. Detectives were hopeful that the national exposure would breathe new life into this case. Some tips were received after the segment aired, but I wouldn't be here reporting this case to you if they'd led to anything. Zach should have been celebrating his 9th birthday on December 18th. Instead, he remained missing. Detectives had chased down more than 700 leads in Zach's disappearance, but they were still baffled. They'd found no evidence to suggest he'd been a victim of foul play. There'd been no confirmed sightings of him since Leah reported him missing, and many people were starting to fear the worst. By the end of the year, Zach's case had completely faded from headlines, and as the 1st anniversary of his disappearance approached, his family hoped that they could garner enough publicity to jumpstart his case again. Detectives announced that Zach's picture was going to be featured on a billboard, as well as on a flyer sent to more than 800,000 homes in Florida in September of 2001. Unfortunately, the 1st anniversary publicity the family had hoped to garner never happened due to what happened on September 11th of 2001. The story of the missing 9-year-old was overshadowed by the attacks that took place that day. other two were age progression photos that showed what he might look like at ages 10 and 14. And she remarked, "It's terrible having to watch him grow up on a t-shirt." On the 9th anniversary of Zach's disappearance in 2009, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released a new aged progressed photograph of Zach to show what he might look like at 17 years old. And for his family, it was really hard to kind of reconcile this image with the little 8-year-old blonde boy that had gone missing. To picture him as this young man trying to decide what college he was supposed to go to. And although Zach's disappearance got little publicity out of the state of Florida, his family did everything they could to remind people that he was still missing. His grandmother and aunts attended numerous missing child rallies and marches. They also made sure to support the families of other missing children, which I think is amazing. They could have just ignored everyone. And again, you don't really see his mother out here doing things. In September of 2020, Zach's loved ones marked the 20th anniversary of his disappearance. One of his aunts, Billy Jo, told reporters that the passage of time had done little to diminish the grief that they felt. Here we are at the 20-year mark, and we are still no closer to learning anything more about his disappearance than we knew on the first day. You do not want to live in this nightmare. Billy Jo was convinced that someone snuck into the apartment and kidnapped her nephew while he was sleeping. I believe he was taken from his bed by an abductor, someone that watched him travel back and forth to school. The Clearwater Police Department considered Zach to be missing under suspicious circumstances, but investigators have no evidence to suggest that he is deceased. In 2022, a spokesperson about his case remained open and active. Said his case remained open and active, and they urged anyone with information to call detectives. Billy Jo still hopes that her family will be reunited with Zach. I do believe my nephew is still out there. she doesn't really want to talk to police. Now, maybe it is true. She doesn't want to admit that she had gone out and left him home alone. I understand that. I really do. Maybe she is just trying to move forward as best as she can and not rehash the same story over and over and over and over. Maybe it is absolutely heartbreaking for her to discuss without just absolutely losing it. Being a person who compartmentalizes things myself in order to get through days one at a time, I completely understand that, and I don't really see her. I read some articles that said that they thought she was kind of like heartless and selfish for not discussing the case more and for the family being out there, but I kind of get it in a way that you have to just kind of shut things down in order to function, which is not the right way to do things by any means. However, I don't know what I think about this case. I don't have any theories. There's just nothing. I mean, his dad wasn't in his life, so, you know, she didn't have a boyfriend or anyone with ill will against her. He was 8, so he didn't have anyone with ill will against him. I feel like if he had wandered out of that apartment, they would have found him. He was 8, he barefooted, he couldn't have made it very far. And if he'd wandered, someone would have seen him. If one of the neighbors, or several of the neighbors, or how many, I don't even know, noticed her car pulling in at 3 a.m., they may have noticed a little boy wandering around in a t-shirt and boxers, barefooted at 3 a.m. or whatever time it was, as well, you know. So, I absolutely hate that I'm sitting here telling you that this case is not solved. I hope that he is out there somewhere, 30-something years old. I don't have a calculator in my brain. Living his best life, and maybe he's 8, because he maybe doesn't even realize who he is. But that can't be true. I don't know. I hope he's out there somewhere, just living his life. It's always absolutely crazy to me, and I know we've discussed that about 800 million times, how people can just disappear. Now, granted, this was 23, almost 24 years ago, you know, so there wasn't as much public social media, cameras, etc., so back then, I never really thought about things like that. I was a freshman in 1999, so I'm showing my age. I didn't have a cell phone, thank God. But I think it is crazy that people still go missing in 2023. Anyway, I'm gonna close this video out with saying, please leave your questions down below. My last Q&A on Patreon was over 1 hour long. And if you're still watching and you want to join us on Patreon, we are reading, see if I can pick it up without too much noise, a serial killer magazine. I just started that Thanks, guys. I love you so, so much. Goodbye.